Hi, my name is Richard Leiter, and welcome to the Naked Booktuber. Today I wanted to talk about my discovery and use of the Zorn Palette, also called the Apelles Palette, which basically consists of painting with only 4 colors: white, black, some kind of red, and yellow ochre. Now, when I first started out painting, before I attempted to do representational painting, copying, the old masters and some modern masters, I just kind of did abstract paintings because it was all about the color. You didn't have to worry about line, about drawing first. These were not considerations, so it seemed to be much more accessible and easy for me to do. And for people who were drawn for some reason, whatever reason, to painting, they usually are attracted, as I was, to abstract painting because it's all about the color. I was immediately interested in painters like Sam Francis and Morris Louis and I don't know, anything that had color in it. Juan Miró. I mean, Miró was, for me, if I wanted to copy a painting or do a painting, it was very easy to trace, or even if you couldn't draw, to copy a very sharp, hard-edged Miró painting. It was all about the brightness and the contrasts of primary colors. So that's what I did. It was always very, very difficult for me to get away from this abstract, expressionist, primary color kind of thing. Even when I was painting representationally, when I began painting representationally, I always wanted to cling to some kind of primary color, to a bright red with a blue background. I mean, something familiar to me, something very, very bright, and it just went against the grain for me to paint in muted colors. To paint with white. I mean, when I was painting abstract paintings, I avoided white like the plague. I didn't really know how to handle white and so on. So anyway, to make a long story short, I began painting representationally, copying, teaching myself how to paint by copying old master paintings. And little by little, I began giving up this whole fixation on red, white, and blue, these primary colors that screamed at you. Because the old masters don't really do that. They don't paint like Miró did, But it was very difficult for me to get rid of red splattered all over the painting. I mean, it's true. A painter like Rubens, he loved red, and he would often put, red drapery in one of his portraits. But for the most part, I noticed that the colors were very subtle colors. They weren't primary, and I just had a problem with that. And it was only little by little that I began to look at these painters and realize that many of them actually started out with something like a Zorn palette, a very, very limited palette. And so I began using the Zorn palette also. And I noticed that a painter like Corot was all about the Zorn palette. I mean, it was just, it just immediately began to appeal to me when I started looking at paintings by Corot. Frans Hals also. A lot of his paintings, basically the Zorn palette. So, so I started trying to do the Zorn palette as best I could. I would start out a painting with the Zorn palette because, color is so bewildering. There are so many subtleties and variations. It's so mysterious. You have to ground yourself someplace. And I started to ground myself with these 4 basic colors to give myself some kind of a base. I mean, if I needed to use a blue for a sky or a background, well, then I would use a blue. I would add that to the Zorn palette. Or if I needed to use a green, I would add a green. But I would always start out with those basic 4 colors. And more I began to realize the power and the beauty of the of the Zorn Palette. And just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I'm going to switch off now and just show you just 3 paintings which illustrate what I'm talking about. So bear with me for a second, will you? Okay, so here's the first this is when I was in my Miro phase, my abstract expressionist phase, my Sam Francis splatter phase, all of this bright color phase. This was heavily influenced by Miro. This is my surrealistic portrait of Salvador Dali. And as you can see, this is the way I relate it to painting. It's got to be primary colors for the most part. Very difficult for me to do anything else but that. Then, when I began painting representationally and copying paintings, here's an example of that, which was done in the last year. Okay, here's another painting, and again, it's good. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to draw and get to the point where I could do something like this. But still, it was very, very difficult for me to break with the primary colors. Once again, in the foreground, looks like you have the earth, and it's kind of like a deep, rich red. And I have my standard blue in the background because I knew from my old abstract expressionist / Miro days that blue and red really go together and pop. So, and also in the feathers in the young princess's hair, I had my bright primary colors, my red and my yellow. And it was and the original painting doesn't have this at all, but it was just very hard for me to avoid the temptation to use these colors. That's what I'm talking about. And then I'll show you, fast forward, and little by little, I began to loosen up and relinquish my hold of primary colors. I'm going to show you a painting that I just did, which is basically all Apelles palette. And let me show it to you in just a second, and I'll show you what a difference there is, and how I've managed to let go of this primary color fixation I had. I still love red, and I'll use red and blue and the yellow when appropriate, but I don't feel the same fixation as I'm getting more used to using earth colors and more muted colors and using different combinations with white. I'm more able to let go of this, and my color sense is becoming, I think, a bit more sophisticated. So let me show you my most recent painting. Hold on a second. Okay, so this is a copy of a painting by an Italian painter named Natale Schiavone. And I just happened to come across it. Didn't ever hear of this guy before, and I liked it. Now, this painting was painted almost exclusively using the Zorn palette. The only deviation from it was I used a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of ultramarine blue when I made the background, the sky. But aside from that, it's completely Zorn palette. And I'm amazed that I was able to do this, that I had the discipline and the interest to drop my crazy fixation with primary colors, which just don't work when you're copying an old master painting, or even a contemporary painting that's like this. So let me just give you a close-up here. The hair is the Zorn palette. I use the hair, it looks brown, right? But I used a combination of black and a little red. And as it got lighter, I used a little yellow ochre, and then of course I used white for the shiny parts, with the light really reflected on the hair. Again, this background on either side of her, completely Zorn palette. All 4 colors: red, white, black, and yellow ochre. Her face, entirely Zorn. Entirely Zorn. Now the sky gave me some trouble, because when I began doing the sky, I kind of regressed into my old instincts and drew the sky with a very bright blue. And that's not what the painting is like. It's more muted. It's a more subtle sky. It's kind of a muted grayish blue, white. They're almost like a little bit of violet in the gray at times in the original painting. So I tried to be a little more sophisticated in my painting of the sky, and I want to continue in this vein. I want to get out of this fixation with having a bright blue sky that hits you on the head like a club. So I would like to do more paintings like this and really explore the power of the Apelles palette. One thing, I think I've said this before, one great advantage in the Apelles palette is because you don't have to be overwhelmed by all the various color choices. You only have these 4 colors. You can focus more on your draftsmanship, the form, the volume of whatever it is you're painting. I mean, one of the disadvantages, as much as color is a joy to me, I love color, it's the reason I began painting. One of the disadvantages is because if your draftsmanship is not that great, you can always sort of distract the viewer from it by overwhelming him with color, with bright color, and it's like it's a crutch. And I'm at the point now where I'm able to let go of the crutch to a much larger extent than ever before. This painting, even though it's not the greatest painting, it's not a bad painting, and it does symbolize to me a new growth in my awareness of the craft of painting.